Welcome to the Star Wars Reporter podcast, the official podcast of StarWarsReporter.com. I am one of the hosts, the least attractive host, Wookiee Steve, but I'm here with two of my buddies, my partners in crime, this fellow scoundrels. We have Jason.
Hey, I realized this weekend I was watching a bunch of different things that Porg is really close to Borg.
Oh,
Technically, it's a continent away.
that's right. And we have Trooper Todd temporarily.
Yes. Short visit here. Short visit.
He just he's being called out for his for real life duties.
Real life duties.
He just came in
dad
to
duties,
show
yeah.
us dad duties. That's good. Yeah. See, they always want us around when they need us, right?
That's exactly it.
As
Crazy.
I always bug my wife. I always tell her, Father's Day is the most important day of the year, and I always mark it on the calendar. I have like Father's Day Eve, Father's Day, Boxing Day, and then I always on this big calendar we have on the fridge. And I always like the week before the preparation for Father's Day week, and then reflection after Father's Day. And so the calendar, June, is absolutely demolished with like Father's Day stuff. I make it out to be like Christmas or something.
I should start looking into doing that too. It's funny. My kids always say, how come there's Mother's Day and there's a Father's Day? What about Kids Day? Kids Day is every other day of the year.
Right.
Yeah. They had their moment.
363 days.
But it's good that you showed up, Todd. You're going to miss out on the riveting talk of the Disney Plus, what do they call it? The Vintage Collection?
Vintage Collection, yes. I was very interested. I saw it the other day and clicked onto it, and I already fell down the rabbit hole sort of thing right away. First thing I watched was that it's not a thing called Boba Fett. It's called something Wookiee, something friendly Wookiee, or
the friendly Wookiee with the it was the animation.
Yes, the animation from the holiday special, which I remember seeing in the holiday special. But it really, as a Star Wars fan back then, that was your first glimpse of Boba Fett in action, right? Because he was cut out of the New Hope, and so that was your first taste of Boba Fett, right? And I love the animation in that. Love the animation. And I haven't went and I IMDb'd it, but I'm pretty sure that's Mark Hamill's first voice acting role in animation.
Yes, definitely.
Oh yeah.
Now somebody who's probably Helm's one of the best animated voices. It could be his humble beginning.
Wait a minute. He actually voiced one of these fairy creatures in that 70s animation film Wizards.
Oh, did he really?
I'm not sure if Wizards came before or after Star Wars.
Well, I don't know what Wizards is.
I think I could be mistaken. We'll look it up. Somebody could look it up. I think Wizards was like 78. Say
right.
But I'm not sure for certain. 78 to 80. It's right in that zone, I think.
I'm looking for it right now, guys. Wizards 1977.
77. All right.
So who would be when this the holiday special came out the year after Star Wars, right? Did it come out in 78?
I think, didn't it come out? Yeah, it was like the following November.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh.
But that is the part of the holiday special that most people would just skip to because it's what you could stand.
I love the way they drew Han Solo's eyes. They're all squinty sort of thing, it's so good. If you guys haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's so good.
It's good. It's on Disney Plus, so you can just watch the part without having to get through the Wookiees talking to each other without a subtitle.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Wookiee talking isn't the worst thing about the holiday special. There's many other things that are way worse.
It's very, very 70s. Before they had child ratings or something on TV, it was wild stuff.
Or even good writers, possibly.
Well, which is interesting because what we're going to talk about later is the Ewok movies, and George Lucas was involved in these TV productions, right? He was the story writer and producer. So I think when they asked him to kind of come up with this, he was like, okay, I'm going to do it this time. I'm not going to have a Ewok variety show.
Smart for him, right? He figured something out. Made a mistake the first time, fixed it the second time.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid watching them when the first Ewok movie came out. I remember watching. I videotaped it on my VHS machine. I had a little pause button, so I cut out all the commercials. I must have watched that movie 20 times, maybe 50 times afterwards. I just kept watching it over and over and over again. Because it's about a daughter and her brother that crashed. No, the whole family crashed land, right? And the parents were missing.
Yeah, the two movies. So you have the Caravan of Courage.
That's what it's called, yes.
Yeah, and then the second one was Caravan of Courage was 84, and the Battle for Endor was 85, and then the Ewoks cartoon came out in 85. So it was all kind of based in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi in that time frame. So the first one, the Caravan of Courage, man, it's like if the Ewoks was Lord of the Rings. That's what it felt like to me, the whole journey, right? And they pick up people along the way, and they're making it to Mordor, where the Gorax is, and it felt like that, and it was very simple and very, very much for children,
Yeah.
You know what really struck me was I actually got, and it's funny because when you said like Lucas was a little more into this, and his imprint, I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely George Lucas stuff. And there was actually, to me, there was a surprising bit of almost Willow-ish feeling I was getting from the Ewok, from especially probably the first one, the Caravans of Courage. But I'm like, this is definitely like, it had a little bit of trappings of like a fan, like you said, Lord of the Rings. And I sort of thought the same thing, but I was like, there's a little bit of Willow-ish in this, like the production, like a really preliminary or low budget-ish kind of Willow feel. But definitely, it was just funny. I was just struck by how George Lucas it all was. It all felt.
Right.
Not surprised. I said, I swear, guys, I gotta go already. I'm so sorry.
Go.
So much. I just wanted to say hi to everybody. Enjoy the show. I know there'll be a lot of great content coming up, but take care, guys. We'll see you guys next week.
All right,
man.
Good luck. Good luck tonight. See you later. So yeah, it very much, again, if felt like a George Lucas thing, and the Caravan of Courage I thought was very, very simple. And I kind of looked up reviews then, or like the feedback, and yeah, it was very simple. And I remember watching it as a kid, and it was fine, but it was long in areas. I felt the Caravan of Courage, right? It was this long trip, and Wicket wasn't speaking English, unlike the second movie. We were talking about this before we went live.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Yeah, I don't know, it was really interesting because I actually now, as especially when I was younger, anything Star Wars, I was absolutely ridiculous for. And I don't remember having a tremendous reaction to these at the time. And when I watched them now, though, I was like, this stuff would be wonderful for a kid. I don't know how. It was tough to tell how a kid today would take to them. I'm like, it's probably all a little rough, a little cheesy, for a kid in 2021, to see these. Right, I don't know. Right. I mean, a very young kid can watch anything, though. But I was like, this is cool. Like, I'm surprised I didn't take to it as well back then as watching it now. I mean, again, now it's obviously kiddie movies, but I'm like, I'm surprised I didn't like it more as a kid. But it's funny because you're putting up the Ewok village and everything.
The Ewok backgrounds, yeah.
The worlds were like the world and the set, the design and was a little better than I had remembered or was anticipating, actually. Like the forest scenes and in the caves, and a lot of times they're up on the sides of like the cliffs and everything. And sometimes there's the matte painting of far below in the forest and everything. But it was cool. It was like a cool atmosphere. It was a little more engaging than I actually remembered. So like I said, overall it was a little better than I hadn't watched anything of these. I might not have seen Caravan of Courage, honestly, like since it aired. I've never saw that again.
Right. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, the what they're calling the Star Wars Vintage Collection that they posted April 2nd on Disney Plus, it includes Caravan of Courage, an Ewok adventure, which we're talking about, Ewoks: The Battle for Endor, the story of the faithful Wookiee. So that's the animation from the holiday special, the Ewoks cartoon series, and Tartakovsky's Star Wars Clone Wars Volume 1 and 2. So those are the things that they posted. And just to mention about the animation, I was really shocked that they didn't, because when the Ewoks aired, it aired at the same time as Star Wars Droids. So it was like the Star Wars Hour. So it was following the adventures of C-3PO and R2-D2 before A New Hope. And I really loved that show. I thought it was really, really interesting because they kept meeting up with people. So it's like this animation. So like these guys here in the picture that's showing, they were the guy on the right was the pilot, and the other guy was the mechanic of this speeder that they would race in competitions. Like they go around just like, like NASCAR or whatever, called the White Witch. And, they ran into different people in the show. See, there's a speeder there. Boba Fett was in it. So it was really interesting. And I just thought, why is that one missing? So it's really interesting. But
yeah, I was just going to ask if that was included. Is that anywhere? That's nowhere on Disney?
You could, not anywhere on Disney. You could look it up on YouTube and see episodes, because there's episodes all over the place. But, nothing on Disney. So, I mean, maybe it's coming. Maybe there's copyright issues with, maybe it still belongs to someone else. But the going back to the Ewok movies, the Caravan of Courage, the little girl, I don't know the actor's name, but that was her first role. She was just a local girl, because they filmed the Ewok movies kind of in and around the Skywalker Ranch, and it was like a national park in that area that they filmed in. So they didn't go back to England and do any of that. But that was her first role. Her second role was the Ewok, the second movie, and then that was it. She never did any acting. So, but she was really good for a little kid that didn't do any acting.
Yeah, she did well. She did, and she was memorable too. Like I always. Yeah. Remembered her, the curly hair and everything, and very Star Wars-ish get up. And it was funny too, because I forgot her brother Mace.
Yes,
and
Mace.
that was pretty funny. I was like, oh man, I totally forgot about that. And then some of the guest stars.
Lucas seemed to like that name Mace then, right?
Yeah, and and that's typical in the creative. Your creations, all your stuff sticks with you, and names, and decades later or something. Oh yeah, you use something you wanted to use for something. Maybe you've already. So that obviously he had a thing for the name Mace, and he wanted to see great things for the name Mace. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was also too like, having not seen this stuff in 100 million years, I got a kick out of Wilford Brimley
in the second one, in Battle for Endor. Yes.
Yeah.
I always think of the Quaker Oats or Cocoon, that Ron Howard movie.
Yes,
he was in both, right? So Quaker Oats, I always think of that when I see him.
And it was funny because I'm actually pretty familiar with him. Like he's been in quite a few movies that I liked, as you said, Cocoon, and I'm a huge fan of a movie, The Natural, baseball movie with Robert Redford. Amazing.
Oh,
movie.
Right.
And he's really good in that. And the funny thing with Wilford Brimley, like he always played like he just had features and his beard and his graying hair. He looked much older than he actually was.
Right.
So like even the 80s, like, and this is ridiculous. This is hysterical to say, is about to age like both of us pretty badly. Todd, wherever you are.
It'll age.
We're older than Wilford Brimley in those movies. Like he's
really, because he seemed like 30 years even older than us in that movie.
He seems like he's like a 68 70-year-old guy or something, and he's not. I'm going to throw this out. He's like 42 or something.
Wow.
But yeah, he's not. He was always cast as older guys, and usually like kind of like usually a little more serious or whatever. Like, so to see him in something like this, the Ewok adventure was like kind of funny because it's almost like out of character for him. Like,
man, his character was so grumpy and mean, and I have to preface this as always. It is the 80s. It was made for kids, but man, he was like, it took forever for him to come around. It seemed to me, but
well, in that regard, that's Wilford.
Well, yeah. Do you know what I looked up on IMDb? Really funny. He didn't work directly with the directors of the film. He actually had his scenes filmed by Joe Johnson because he didn't get along with the directors. He couldn't work with them, or some kind of tiff or something.
Notoriously really rough. And I hate to like rip on the guy, but he notoriously was like a sourpuss dude to work with. He actually did an interview on local. I grew up in, as you know, in New York, Long Island, New York. And the local newscast show was live at 5, and it was your news, it was your New York City and your local news. But they did other things. They interviewed a lot of famous people. And I'll never forget Wilford Brimley. They had him on, and he'd sit there, and this woman, Sue Simmons, newscaster, really wonderful woman. She's really cool. Right. And really kind of upbeat and everything. And she's like, so, how'd the filming go? And he's like, I don't know. He was just completely like, wanted nothing to do. It was awkward to even watch. So he was notoriously like a grumpy guy to work with. So, and was frequently cast as such. So I was surprised he even like kind of did something like that movie. But as you're pointing out, I mean, he was kind of typical of it.
The difference between the first and the second Ewok film was like way night and day. And I thought that, I thought that they really improved on kind of the budget and the special effects, such as it was with the stop motion. Again, the 80s, the stop motion was it wasn't like movie quality like they did with Autons or the AT-ATs or any of this kind of stuff. It was like painful, but it kind of reminded me of Willow. Like I didn't like some of the stop motion they did with that the monster
the
at the end of Willow.
That
thing was horrible. But the thing is I also read, IMDb is a great thing, that the second movie they had a warning when it aired, and to warn parents that this might be a little much for kids. And holy cow,
I seem to remember that
the Ewoks like arrowing, based and arrows, murdering the marauders, which defending themselves, but killing them, and basically the marauders were slavers. They were like capturing everyone, and that little girl. It was wild.
Yeah, no, for again, all things considered, for the a kids movie and for the time, and absolutely. And I'm like, and also I'm like the kid's whole family gets wiped out
right
like
in the beginning.
And she's like, oh well, okay, and she just carries on pretty much. I'm like, that's nuts. I'm like, and that was funny too. The father in the second one, that guy, and his name is, I'm blanking out on his name, but the Breakfast Club, the guy famous for a bunch of 80s
the
movies.
vice principal.
Yes, in the Breakfast Club, and he's a great, by all accounts, he's a great guy. He was a good actor and everything. I totally forgot that he was in it. And also the witch woman who turned into the crow and everything.
Yes.
Fresh off of Dune. Yes, and she's the Bene Gesserit witch
Yes.
In Dune. So that was kind of funny to see her, and they obviously cast her sort of the type in the Ewok movie. But it was just funny because I had forgotten some of the actors that were in it. But yeah, the production in second one for the Battle for Endor was, again, all things considered, 1985 television movie. It was, you could tell that they kind of ramped it up. And actually, to add on to with the stop motion critters, and I'm sure you noticed the critters in that. Where did we just see those things? The Mandalorian.
Oh, yes.
Did you notice?
Yes, they were
like
what are they called?
Yeah, and they were identical. Like that was them.
Well, that's I think when those first appeared in The Mandalorian, people went back and said that's from the Ewok movie, right? So they kind of, were bringing that into what do you call that? They brought it into canon again, right? Because everyone's waiting to see what's going to be brought back into canon, etc. So, yeah, I thought that was really, really cool to see. But the second one, like the first one, to me, it's cute. It'd be good for a little kid. It's forgettable. And this one was much, much better. It wasn't great, but I didn't mind Wicket speaking English because it saved us from like I said before, the Wookiees, in the holiday special, just talking and
right. It would have been it was fine to me. Like, and they didn't have every Ewok speak English. It was just a key, it was Wicket and a couple key lines, and I'm like, it was fine. It blended.
Yeah,
it blended right into the.
And apparently they weren't. I think there was a backlash back then about why are they speaking English, and they shouldn't be speaking English, and some fans even want it removed from copies, which is weird. So, I think what. I don't know, was the director or producer had said, well, they're not actually speaking English. They're speaking the common language that they learned from that family that are speaking it. But for the sake of the viewers, we made it English, right? So it's kind of a smart ass comment, really, which I think is really funny. But what I really dug was at the very end, all the fighting and battles. And I said this to you guys before we went live. I loved seeing the Ewoks fighting back against the Marauders, and then like the ones that they killed, they would take their blasters off them. So then you have these scenes where they're rushing with these blasters and shooting and like killing people.
Yes, savage. Hey, it lent some weight to their their performance in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
I almost thought it was like Lucas was like, no, you see, they're pretty badass, like almost like these movies he wanted to show you that the Ewok, especially the second one, Battle for Endor,
right.
Like, you see, these are tough little guys. It's not totally funny, cutesy stuff.
And notice that notice that they didn't eat any of the humans.
Yeah, they
should have. Funny because that very first scene in the first movie where they find the little girl, Wicket's father and brothers, I guess, they find her in the ship, and the father pulls off the hatch, and there she is, right? She's like all scared. And my one kid's in the room, and I go, food, but she didn't get it. She didn't get it. So anyways, it was a dad joke wasted, but food.
Right,
but they didn't end up eating anyone. And maybe they've had visitors like that, or maybe from the first crash ship or something, that family, and that's where they got those women's clothes from for Leia when she showed up in Return of the Jedi.
Oh, right.
Oh.
There you go.
Or they just ate a crashed, stranded person.
A little bit of almost retcon in there a little bit. Not really retcon.
But yeah, I did like it. I like the second one a lot better. I was more just giggling a lot from nostalgia and stuff. And I think that they made the Ewoks a lot better, in my opinion. Like the costumes and the functionality of it, a lot better than Return of the Jedi. It seemed like they could do more. The eyes moved. I don't know. It seemed
they're definitely more mobile and everything. Yeah, for sure.
So, and they did use a lot of, speaking of the Ewoks cartoon, I don't know if anyone remembers that, but they did kind of the same year the cartoon came out as Battle for Endor. And it's interesting because they used that little, remember the first movie where they had the little fairy thing on Endor, those little light creatures, I forget what they're called.
Yeah, the mace actually would set loose.
Yes. Yeah. So they use that in the series, in the animated series. There were these little forest fairies or whatever, and they were, the evil witch person, would use them to do stuff if she caught them. And in the first movie, Logray, when he had that little spinny thing on the table that showed where the family was, they actually used that in the animation as well. So, I mean, they really stayed consistent back then, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, Lucas was already, Star Wars, the whole trilogy already out, and, there was already so much lore was at least being talked about, and, the universe was filling up already, and then would really fill up when the role-playing game came out, a couple of years later. What it was, like 87, I think the Star Wars role-playing game came out.
Right, yeah.
For sure.
So, before we get going, I just wanted to remind everyone that make sure that you subscribe to us on our social media, which we still have Facebook at this point, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, if you subscribe to us on YouTube, it would really help us out and help spread the word. So, and you can also go to StarWarsReporter.com, the news site, where we have we cover different stories. We have interviews, contests, giveaways, whatever. There's an interview I'm waiting for coming up, and I'm looking forward to posting. And another source for all your Star Wars, Disney, and fandom news.
Absolutely.
So the other thing too,
yes,
I don't know if we're ready for this yet, is the Clone Wars.
Now, those cartoons, those were the ones I acquitted because I saw those when they were out. I had the DVD. I actually watched the first season. Right. We were talking about it before. I don't know if that was on camera. That was right before we went on Tartakovsky's Clone Wars. I loved that, and I'm not usually that into that sort of animation, like the anime. I never got that. Well, it's not anime, but to me, it was like a little bit anime-ish.
It's a different kind, yeah.
Yeah, it was a little different, but there were some elements of it, like just very direct style, and all the characters just intense and quick still frames, and just, you want to talk about not wasting any time. That I loved it, and like they kind of focused on each main character, and actually like the Mace Windu scene was just killer. He takes out just, a field of battle droids, and Anakin facing off with Ventress, Asajj Ventress. Totally killer. And you see Anakin like a lot more, dark side, a lot more leaning towards the dark side in those particular cartoons. Now, of course, the animation would go on to improve and computer animated in the whole Clone Wars series that most people are familiar with. Right. But anybody who hasn't seen the that early, they call it the micro Clone Wars, or what the heck is it called? The micro episodes. I actually have them. I gotta go already. Yeah, the micro series, the 2D micro series of the Clone Wars. I think it's just the 2 seasons. Before our podcast, I watched the first season again. I actually got to watch the second one again. But really, really cool stuff. Really intense. Like the battles are intense. I highly recommend any Clone Wars fan who hasn't seen the original, the micro series, check it out. It's, again, the animation's it's not computer animated, it's not like updated, but for what it is, it's really cool stuff. You get some great Dooku in it. Dooku's just killer in it, and he's kind of messing with Asajj Ventress. The clone battles are just brutal. You see the clone troopers. Yes, Obi-Wan and Anakin.
I do like the art.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. There's a lot of tension in it. I get excited about that because I watched that first season DVD over and over and over again.
See, and sorry, this reminds me of the battle for Endor when I was looking through the IMDb. Terrell, so the woman who is named Terrell, she's that kind of sorceress or something, this witch that's working with the Marauders, who is from Dune.
Yes.
Apparently, according to IMDb, Sherelle is a Night Sister. So the Night Sisters are sect of the Sith witches.
Really?
Yeah. Speaking
That's
of
pretty
so, and they're sensitive to the dark side of the Force, right? And they had many dealings with Count Dooku. So, and they appeared in the third season of the Clone Wars.
Right. That's
so I
pretty.
thought that was
That's very cool. I never would have guessed that at all. I realized that.
And I always thought that too, right? When I was watching that, whenever Low Gray's doing his magic or stuff, or even in the cartoon, it's like that little top-looking thing that he used to scribe where the parents were. I thought, like, is there like a crystal in there? The Jedi crystal I had on the tip of my tongue. I'm forgetting. Are they just? Yeah, Kyber crystal. Are they just like sensitive? Is he just sensitive in the Force, like a Force sensitive person, and it's magic to them? Same with this. I thought that right in Terrell, the bad witch there, that she was just using the Force in some way to for magic.
Right. Yeah.
So just kind of. So yeah. Speaking of, as soon as you said that, it reminded me of what it said about the Night Sisters. So
that's a cool tidbit. I had no idea.
Yeah. Oh, also too, they gave a list of all the Ewok words used, and I didn't get it. It was in a different area, but apparently there was an Ewok swear.
Oh.
That made it into the show. It was like FEECH or something like that, and that's an Ewok swear.
You can't say
Someone
that on
said it.
television.
I know. It was like Battlestar Galactica when Starbucks says frack.
That was brilliant, actually. That show, yes, even the original one, that they made up their own curse and then they just use it liberally, like fracking. Brilliant, yeah, absolutely brilliant.
And I remember seeing that on TV when I was a kid, the original. And I remember Starbucks says that, and then it goes to Apollo, and he says, "What was that?" or something like that, because Apollo was super straight and Mr. Good Guy and stuff. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. The Ewoks have a curse in the Ewok movie.
The curse word. Yeah, there's all these words. They had this like words for goodbye, hooray, all right, good or yummy. Oh, dang. Sorry, they listed here as dang.
Oh, are we allowed to say that on this podcast?
Dang. Lurdo, which means loser. Yeah, it's just, eat, yes, that, no. Okay, it's so funny. So funny.
That's pretty. That's
I've yet, and I'll say this again, I've yet to watch the Clone Wars, the series. I keep saying I'm getting around to it, and I was even had that list of the lazy man's way of watching the Clone Wars, where it's like, the episodes to watch each season to kind of get
and
caught
that's
up.
Fine, and a lot of people out there, say, oh, watch the whole thing. It's whatever you want to do. I loved it overall. There is a lot of kind of filler. I mean, it's all cool, but it's kind of like a lot of the episodes, it's them fighting the Clone War, but it's not like a pivotal arcing part of the story. And when as the seasons go on, more and more of the episodes are like the real, because when you get the main players, when you get Dooku involved and Grievous, those episodes are some of the best Star Wars ever. You know, and you get Anakin and all his stuff.
Right.
That's the only knock I have with the Clone Wars. There's a lot of episodes that are just kind of, it's cool, but either they go down, they save a world from the droid armies, and that's it. And it's not like, all right, this didn't really affect the main character arcs and the villains. Like when you get the real good villains and Palpatine, Sidious, and everything involved, it's so good. And again, it gets more intense and it gets better as it goes, for sure.
Yeah, and from what I'm told with the Clone Wars, I keep being told, if anything you're going to take from it, it's a better kind of it shows a better look at Anakin's fall to the dark side, where it explains everything else, and it even makes him a better character than from the prequels.
Unquestionably. Well, it's like a supercharged prequels. It is the Clone Wars. I mean, it's kind of funny, you know, the prequels, for as much as we do love the prequels on Star Wars Reporter overall, for sure. You know, they almost tease, before I ever saw the prequels, The Phantom Menace, I thought the whole thing was just going to be the Clone Wars in your face. Back, you know, you didn't see quite as much of the actual engagements. You know, you got the end of Attack of the Clones, and then you got kind of like in the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. But the Clone War cartoons is obviously just in your face, constant. And there's so much stuff with Obi-Wan and Anakin. And then everybody's favorite, too. The Clone Wars is also worth it for Ahsoka. Ahsoka, who's maybe, and for me personally, a character who turned around to go from a character I was like, you know, kind of silly sidekick of Anakin, and she calls him Sky Guy, and it starts out, I'm like, by the end of that show, it is an incredible evolution of Ahsoka. Like, she becomes awesome by the end of that show. She's awesome well before the end of it, but I just mean, like, she quickly becomes, she just evolves so much. And you understand why there's a lot of fans who have Ahsoka as one of or their favorite Star Wars character. And I'll also say real quick, the final season that they just, you know, was just released just last year. Oh boy, it's a gift to the fans, especially like the last half of it. It's so cool when it takes place and how it's concurrent with some other stuff. And it's like, oh my God, you see another side of certain things that you already know. And it's, I'm not going to like spoil it for you, but.
I find
that's my ramble.
I find that the animation with Lucasfilm is a really huge asset and anchor for the company, because it's like the best story writing is coming out of, say, the Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels, which I love, absolutely. Right? And even back in the 80s when it wasn't really, you know, the animation thing, like I said, the Star Wars droids, although made for kids, like it has that kid aspect to it. It has some really interesting stories, and it wasn't like epic characters, and I don't think you saw much of the stormtroopers, right? It was just R2-D2 and C-3PO, you know, becoming, you know, property of one owner and their story, and then moving on to another and on to another. It was really interesting in that fact, because, and I think that was the first time I really wanted, like, you know, a series or something where it wasn't, you know, the epic characters fighting directly with the Empire. It's just like people living. I always thought was really cool. And then, so now I think the backbone of Lucasfilm or Star Wars in general is the animation, right? That story group is spot on. Dave Filoni and those people, amazing.
I thought too, and some may not agree with this. To me, The Mandalorian is even like, and of course, no, we want a live action, hands down, unquestionably. But if it was, or there was a version of it, just almost how it is, but it was animated, it would still be pretty cool. Like, I could almost picture it honestly, as the original Clone War, the micro
Right.
Clone Wars that we're talking about. I could almost see the Mandalorian would almost work like that, like for sure. But sort of
It's
that
a good
comic
fallback
bookish.
on, though, right? It's a good fallback on, because
Yeah, for
it's like
sure.
if they're like, man, I'd love to do a series on this, but the production's going to be too expensive. Let's go animation, right?
Yeah, and it just gets better and better.
And it'd be simple, right? Because everyone wants to see a series with their favorite character, but probably most of it doesn't make sense. But some animation might make sense. Like the latest rumor I read about Disney trademarking Luke Skywalker Jedi Academy or something like that.
Right.
It sounds interesting. Like I said before, I don't think they're going to go live action, regardless of Sebastian Stan or how good they can do. I think it'd be cheaper and easier for them to make animation and animated series. And even if they wanted to, or if he wanted to, have Mark Hamill voice himself or Luke Skywalker.
You know, the one thing though, you know, look at the world's reaction to that last Mandalorian episode. Has Star Wars had a reaction, even with the Force? You know, even before people started getting down on the sequels and everything. That last episode with Luke, that's the best reaction Star Wars has had in this entire new era.
Right.
And they're aware of that. So that could tip the scales towards, oh, well, they really like Luke like that, you know. And you're talking about Luke Skywalker, you know, like post Return of the Jedi with so you know, you get him in his black outfit and the green saber and all that, and at the, you know, the right into the beginning of the height of his powers, and it could be very enticing. So we'll see. You know,
because that's the thing, right? People were saying after season 2 of The Mandalorian, Baby Yoda's gone, or Grogu. That's a huge part of the bread and butter of that show, right? For like casual or non-fans that got pulled in by Baby Yoda, right? Now what, right? Like they could skip years later and he shows back up or whatever, right? But why not continue it at the Jedi Academy in animated form? At least they'd get their cute little Baby Yoda, and the adventures continue until someone's nephew kills everyone.
yeah.
But it just seems so simple a thing, right? Like if Lucasfilm has 2 projects they really want to do, but they only really have enough money to concentrate on one, they could. I'm not saying animation is easy or cheaper, because I mean I have no idea, but it just seemed to me then to be like, make this one animated, make this one live action, because we can. That's a lot. Makes sense.
Well, I would say that I hope there is always, and I'm sure there will be, one of the series running that is animated, you know, and just what you're saying, you could look at all of them and think, you know, which one would really take the animation? And sometimes the most epic, like that's another cool thing about the Clone Wars, which is good all the way through. It's friggin' epic.
Yeah.
It's, you know, massive battle, you know, constantly. It's, you know, different worlds and huge starships going at it, and Jedi, you know, jumping around, and just, there's, you know, obviously it's animated. You don't have to hold back. There's no holds barred.
Yeah.
You know, and this discussion actually reminded me of one thing really quick. I want to say that I wasn't aware of, that I just found out, looking at the stuff that we're talking about today. And then I jumped on YouTube and was just looking at some other things, Kenobi and stuff like that. I did not realize how they're filming the latest stuff, and namely Mandalorian, even, where they're doing this pretty much all on like a huge, like round sound stage.
Yeah.
And now it's almost like a surround video screen. It's not green screen or blue screen.
It's a new thing. Yeah.
They're just putting up the scenery, you know, on like their own movie, you know, putting up the graphics, and there's I did not realize that the Mandalorian, that predominantly, or maybe like all, when they're out in the desert or something, and there's mountains in the distance and the dunes and maybe some ships or whatever, that's all on the screen. I didn't know they were doing it like that.
It's wild.
Like,
and again,
oh
too, you
God.
probably saw that Disney Plus has a behind the scenes look at all that. They get into special effects, they talk to the directors, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really good series to watch.
And that's just so cool. And it's like, wow, that's how far we've come now. And how cool is that? How much sense does that make? Dress up the stage, right around you, but then there's the huge movie-ish screen circling, wrapping the whole thing, and just put whatever graphics, environments, everything on that screen. I'm like, wow. I'm like, I had no idea they were doing it like that.
Yeah, it's wild. I when I found that out, I was blown away. Right, I was completely fooled. Right, because
they call it something, and I can't think of it.
Yeah, I think we're all accustomed to green screens. We could see it. We're all smart now, but holy cow, this new stuff is wild.
Yeah, that's just kind of funny because it's like, well, they put the green screen and then they layer, space and starships or the surroundings, and now it's like, well, why even for a lot of that they don't even have to bother putting green screen. They just put screens with the actual perfect, high definition graphics of the actual visuals. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, we've come that far now where they can do that. The quality is well enough so that it can be filmed and it's going to translate perfectly. I'm like, that's pretty nuts.
It'll be interesting to see that technology on the big screen, right? It's like, I wonder if it's going to be just as smooth as we see it on our televisions at home. I'm sure it will be, but yeah. I mean, if we ever get to go back to movie theaters ever again, but
crazy.
So I guess that's the conversation on the Star Wars Vintage Collection. If you haven't seen it, you need to go watch them. The Ewok movies, I think, are the first one is okay. The second one is a lot better, but they are for kids and nostalgia. Again, too, when we were watching them, Star Wars was gone.
Yeah, it was precious because it was like, no matter, it was like, this is just more of this world, this universe. So it meant something. But I definitely agree. Like the second one, the Battle for Endor, was pretty cool for what it's, again, it's 80s, it's television, it's rough by today's standards. But all things considered, though, it's a pretty cool adventure. And I was really taken with how much, and again, you said this in the beginning, how much it was like Lord of the Rings-ish, or like, and like I said, I thought it was kind of Willow-ish. It was like a fantasy adventure.
Yeah.
I think the environment's a lot, the forest, and then you have caves, you got a lot of creatures, and it had a fantasy element to it. But
yeah. The first one too, I want to point this out. I forgot my notes on it. I thought it was funny in the first one where they're in the Ewok village or like Wicked's house and stuff. And it's all like these normal animals, like a ferret and a rabbit and like normal Earth animals. There was no budget for like making a cute, weird alien thing or so. And did you notice that they were all living on the ground? Like, it did seem they had a budget to have them in the trees, right? So they're like, just make a hut on the ground, right?
Yeah,
the Ewoks, the whole purpose of Ewoks being in the trees is because they're small and they have a lot of really large, dangerous creatures on the surface. So be off the ground in the tree houses, right?
But, I guess you're talking significant more. I mean, even just to replicate that, even, bring like something up 2 feet in the air. I guess it would have been that much more effort.
So especially, if they were just filming
the budgetary scales, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, they were filming in a national park. I guess they just couldn't build on the trees. I guess that would have been a no-no. But I mean, when you're thinking about creatures like the Goraks, look like 20-foot tall monster, you want to have a hut on the ground. So I thought that was funny, but it was just budget. And
I
don't think, maybe he took it serious as in controlling the story, George Lucas, but he wasn't like, look, I did the holiday special, or someone did the holiday special. I'm going to write these, but there isn't going to be a lot of money into it, because TV, at least back then, was like the lower class thing. Everything was movies, right? This might be reversed now. So I think that's funny. But
I just want to say too, if anybody like looking at the stuff we're talking about, definitely again the original Clone War cartoons. I think it's just 2 seasons. Ewoks for life, Spawn,
Ewoks for life,
and we have Ewoks for life now too. After all the material they just put up there, but the Tartakovsky's Clone Wars really, really, really enjoyable. Like that's definitely my recommendation for the old stuff they just put up.
James was saying, I cried my eyes out when Sindel's parents died. They show them die. This is a movie for kids.
Patricide. We were talking about that. We were saying like how that the battle for Endor was like, it started, they killed her whole the kid's whole family gets taken out on screen, like, and Steve was saying like it was for the level of show pretty violent, actually. Like, but no, but
I was just laughing. I couldn't believe it.
Out, and it was like
it was bad.
And they killed the guy from the Breakfast Club. The
principal, the vice principal. Yeah, I just couldn't believe it. When Sindel runs up and her brother is fighting with his little blaster, and the mom is out. But of course, they didn't have the same actress, so all you saw was her.
She's done, sprawled on the ground, and then the father it was kind of creepy how they did it too. Like they showed like his hand or whatever, like he was shooting. And they showed a couple pretty cool shots of him like shooting back and forth with the Marauder guys, whatever. And then you see like his hand or whatever, and he just gets overrun. And it was almost like an off-screenish. And then those guys just come out, and they just took him down. It was like, damn.
Yeah. It was. Of course, they didn't directly show it. So when the father gets killed, you just see his hand, and then. When the mother and the son get killed, Mace, they go into a hut, and then when she's running away, the hut gets blown up or whatever, and it's like you just assume. And then the life wrist things that tells their thing, it's like, oh, the light went out. So I think that's really funny. So
that's right, that the wrist transistor things for the family connector.
Yeah, so they were able to track each other in case, because they always seem to get lost, right? It was probably an investment they got into. So.
It was like the running man or something. The thing would go off if you got too far away.
Yeah, but they always seem to get away. Yeah, it was good, and like I said, it was another great ending Ewok battle, right? The Marauders versus the Ewoks, and Ewoks with blasters. It's just really awesome. So they got really good at it by the end of the movie. They're like, And I was okay with them learning some English or whatever language, right? Because they've been hanging out with this family apparently for 6 months, right? This family was between the first and second, it was 6 months. So.
Yeah, and then James pointed out, we were talking about that earlier, actually, about the brother's name, Mace, and we were just saying that how, there you go. And like as a creative person, your universe, you have a lot of similar stuff, or you recycle stuff, or like you say, Mace could have just been a common name in the universe. It's like Michael, there's another Mace. But it's interesting. You can think too that, or it could be like George just does like the name, and decades later, he's like, okay, I can use another Mace for this really killer character, Jedi character. But we were saying before, like, just how very George Lucas-ish, and especially to me that second one, the Battle for Endor, but definitely very, very Lucas-ish, and stuff like that kind of lends testimony to that.
Right. And James, to your question, I always assumed the family was speaking Ewok, and the second one is just translated. Apparently, they addressed that when some fans were upset that they shouldn't be, Wicket shouldn't be speaking English and take it out. That he was actually speaking their common language the family had taught them, which was what's it called? Abresh or something like that. Anyways, and that for the sake of the audience watching, they made it English. So I don't know if it was smart ass or not, but they were kind of saying they weren't speaking English.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It was fine.
But it was a good kids. I mean, it was the second one. It deserved the warning, but it's still a good kids movie, and it was a lot of fun, right? All this the vintage collection, right? It's like I think they're still running off the nostalgia that Luke Skywalker showing up at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian brought, and maybe they're just like starting to realize, hey, maybe we should bring more of this nostalgia stuff in, and so we'll see more and more of this older stuff. Or
like you were suggesting before, like with the when with the suggestion that maybe Luke Skywalker Academy, they'd secured the right that
the
was
copyrights for it.
That might be something, and that may very well be a reaction. Like I said, the Luke Skywalker Mandalorian episode was, I think, the best reaction in all of new Star Wars since 2015.
Right.
I think it was the strongest positive reaction that the entire fan base had, and they're aware of that.
Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, hopefully that, like I said, even with the nostalgia with the Kenobi series coming up, having Anakin or Darth Vader at the time, right, is showing back up.
That's really intriguing too when you dig into that. I'm really pleased that Joel Edgerton and then Bonnie Pice, I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong. That the Aunt Beru uncle, of course, from the prequels are
right.
And Joel Edgerton, I really like that. He's been in a ton of stuff. He's really good. That guy's really good.
Yeah, which again too, I kind of saw an article that was saying, are we going to see a young Luke Skywalker in the Kenobi series? Right? Even
there was a rumor they were casting. Where the heck did I hear that? I heard that recently. There was a rumor that they were casting like an 8 to 10-year-old boy and girl. So for Kenobi specifically. So again, that's a rumor. But
that'll get the fans going crazy, just from an 8-year-old Luke. So, but so I think that's going to be it for our Star Wars vintage collection conversation. And I always find a reason to talk about Ewoks, so this was fun. It was kind of forced.
This was
everyone.
Man, this was your show, man. I said you were going to shine the show, and you did, Steve. You
totally just wait till season 3 of The Mandalorian. They introduce an Ewok. They have to return.
That's right.
They have to. But thanks to everyone.
That's funny though, right? Though it would be. It could be Luke and Cammy. That's right. It could be. Actually, that's really interesting, James. What James just brought up real quick with Kenobi, because you've got all those characters, and you even heck, we could even see a young Biggs. We could see all those guys. Yeah. But yeah, Cammy would be the girl if it was going to be on exclusively Tatooine. But that could be a whole show too, though. Like, is the Obi-Wan show going to move off of? Are we going to move off of Tatooine?
Yeah. Did he leave, or did he just hang out?
Or even if Kenobi doesn't leave Tatooine, they could still get in some story threads. If you're going to show Luke, there's a good shot. They could even show Leia, and she doesn't necessarily have to be in the vicinity. But that's right. Who knows?
That is true. There's an Ewok computer splicer in the solo tie-in novel, The Last Shot. Peekpa, yeah, I knew that. I like I said,
Peekpa, that's a fantastic name.
Once Peekpa. They put that character in, was perfect. Perfect thing. All right, so I think that our topic for next week is going to be on Tuesday night instead of Monday. We're going to be talking about. We're going to start going into the sequel trilogy and talking about The Force Awakens. So that'll be next Tuesday at 9:15 p.m. Eastern.
That's going to be interesting.
That's going to be interesting. So it'll get interesting after 7, to say the least. But 7. So
I can't wait for that. I can't wait for 8. Brant.
Yeah. No, 7. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So it's going to be a real different change from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And even Solo and Rogue One. So
I haven't watched The Force. I watched The Force Awakens a billion times for the first. This has been the longest I haven't seen The Force Awakens. So I'm actually looking forward to it. I don't think I've watched it since Rise of Skywalker came out, as a matter of fact. So
the sequel to The Force Awakens. Yeah, it's episode 8. I can say that, James.
The last. Look at him. Look at him, James. He's turning red.
And with that, we're going to call it here. I'd like to thank everyone who tuned in, even James with that episode 8 question for me. And we look forward to seeing everyone show up in the chat live next Tuesday at 9:15.
Absolutely,
it's
man.
that dreaded time to say goodbye. No! Don't leave.